Imagine waking up, deciding you want to learn a completely new language, and then just comfortably conversing with native speakers a few days later.
Right, which sounds completely impossible to most people.
Yeah, totally like science fiction. But history is actually full of people who have mastered 20, 30, or, even 42 different languages.
Exactly. And the secret is that they didn't do it because they had superhuman genetics
Uh-huh.
or some kind of magic brain.
Right. They did it because they completely hacked the learning process. So, welcome to Daily English Class. Today, we are handing you that exact blueprint.
Yeah, our mission today is to deliver a highly practical, generous, and, well, completely actionable masterclass on achieving rapid language fluency.
We are officially throwing out the boring grammar textbooks, just tossing them. We're focusing purely on the real cognitive shortcuts that guarantee you will learn 10 times faster.
Because, the difference between the person who becomes fluent in 3 months
Mm.
and the person who is still struggling 3 years later, it isn't intelligence.
No, not at all.
It's purely methodology. I mean, the human brain is actually hardwired to acquire language, provided you feed it the right signals in the right order.
So let's figure out what those signals are, because before we get into the actual mechanics of studying, it seems like, we really have to look at the timeline.
Definitely. The timeline is everything.
Right. The most common scenario I see is someone treating a new language like a casual hobby. Like they download an app, do it for 10 minutes on a Sunday, or take a community college class once a week.
And that is the ultimate trap. It really is. It stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how human memory actually functions.
How so?
Well, we tend to think that total time spent equals results, right?
Yeah.
But the brain doesn't work like a punch clock. Intensity beats duration every single time. It's all about the exponential curve of memory.
Okay, so what does that curve actually look like in practice? Like, give me an example.
Okay, consider two learners. Learner A studies 1 hour a week for 2 years, so that's 104 total hours.
Got it.
Learner B studies 3 hours daily for just 12 weeks. That's about 252 hours.
Okay, wow. So learner B put in more hours.
Right, and you might look at that and think, well, of course they are better. But it's not just the volume of hours, it's the density.
The density.
Yeah. Learner B is going to achieve conversational fluency, while learner A is still going to be, struggling to order a coffee.
Wait, really? So if I practice once a week, does my brain essentially just dump the information between sessions?
Exactly, yes. The brain consolidates language patterns through repetition density. That means frequent exposure within very short time windows.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think of it like trying to pave a dirt road through a rapidly growing jungle.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so if you lay down a little bit of asphalt and then wait a week to come back, the jungle has already grown over your work.
Right, you can't even see the road anymore.
Exactly. You spend 80% of your time just clearing the vines to find the road you started building last week.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But when you study daily, each session lays down new asphalt directly on top of yesterday's work before the jungle can reclaim it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like trying to boil a pot of water by turning the stove on for only 5 minutes a day.
Oh, totally.
Like, it doesn't matter if you do it for 10 years, the water is never, ever going to boil. You need sustained, continuous heat to actually change the state of the water.
That is a perfect way to look at it. You need a critical mass of exposure to shift your brain from conscious, strained effort into automatic processing.
And speaking of strained effort, the biggest cognitive roadblock that prevents that automatic processing it's the translation trap.
Oh yeah, the translation trap is a massive bottleneck.
You mean when someone hears a sentence, translates it into their native language in their head, figures out what they want to say, and then translates it back into the new language before finally speaking?
Yes, that four-step metal trap is just cognitively exhausting. By the time your brain has run that entire relay race, the conversation has moved on.
You're just standing there looking confused.
Exactly, and you are exhausted.
Yeah.
To learn fast, you have to completely eliminate the middleman.
How do you do that?
You have to train your brain to associate new words directly with concepts, images, or actions, never with their English equivalents.
Okay, so if I am learning the word for dog in Spanish, which is perro, I shouldn't be picturing the letters D-O-G in my head.
Never. You picture a golden retriever catching a tennis ball, and you attach the sound perro directly to that image. You are building a direct neural pathway to the concept itself.
But practically speaking, I mean, to build those direct pathways and get out of the translation trap, I have to actually start talking. I have to interact.
Yes, you do.
And this is where the system usually breaks down for people. Like if I'm just picturing a golden retriever and stumbling through a sentence, I'm going to make massive mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we bypass that sheer paralyzing fear of looking foolish in a real conversation? I mean, it's terrifying.
It is, but this is a biological issue, not just a psychological one. You must fundamentally change your relationship with failure.
Okay, biologically, how does that work?
It's because of how your brain's reactive system operates. When you feel judged, stressed, or, embarrassed about using the wrong verb tense, your amygdala flares up.
The threat detection center, right?
Exactly. It creates an effective filter that literally shunts blood and energy away from your prefrontal cortex, which is your brain's learning center.
Wait, so feeling embarrassed biologically prevents me from absorbing the language?
Yes. You physically cannot absorb new linguistic patterns while you are in a state of embarrassment or anxiety. The input just bounces off.
Wow, that's incredible.
So to hack this, we use what we call the silly hat mindset.
The silly hat, what is that?
Metaphorically or literally, if it actually helps you, you imagine you are wearing a ridiculous, oversized, neon-colored silly hat.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And when you're wearing a hat like that, you already look so completely absurd that you no longer care if you make a minor grammatical error.
Oh, I see. It externalizes the vulnerability.
Exactly.
Right.
It removes the ego from the equation. You accept that you are a beginner, you permit yourself to sound foolish, and by doing so, you keep that reactive system calm.
So your brain's learning centers stay wide open.
Precisely.
That is incredibly practical. You just assume the identity of someone who is already ridiculous, so the pressure to be perfect just vanishes.
Exactly.
But let's look at the environment for a second. Let's say I have the mindset. I am ready to put in the intense daily hours. I have my invisible silly hat on, and I'm totally fine making mistakes.
Great.
What if I live in Ohio and I am trying to learn Japanese? Like, I don't have native speakers around me to make mistakes with.
Well, you don't need to live in Tokyo. You need to build a language bubble right where you are in
A
Ohio.
language bubble.
Yeah, we rely on a mechanism called ambient pattern recognition.
How does that work in an adult brain?
The adult brain is a highly efficient prediction machine. When you change your environment to force exposure, your brain relies on spatial memory and context to decode things, just like a child does.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Change your smartphone's operating language to Japanese. Change your computer settings, your social media interfaces.
Hang on, if I change my phone to a language I don't know, I'm not going to be able to find my alarm clock or my settings menu. I'd be totally lost.
For the first 3 days, you will be completely lost.
Yes.
But then your spatial memory takes over.
Oh, because I already know where everything is.
Exactly. You already know where the alarm app is on your screen. When you tap it and see a new string of characters, your brain instantly links those characters to the concept of alarm without you even trying.
Wow, so I'm basically tricking my brain into doing the work for me by replacing my English environment.
You are hacking your environment to force your brain to solve contextual puzzles all day long.
That's brilliant. But what about media? Like, should I just leave a foreign radio station playing while I sleep, hoping it seeps into my subconscious?
No, passive noise doesn't work. The brain tunes out meaningless static. You need what linguists call comprehensible input.
Comprehensible input, okay.
Yes. This brings us to a vital concept, the 80% rule.
What's that?
If you are watching a television show or reading an article and you only understand 20% of the words, that content is useless to you. It's just noise.
Right, you just get frustrated.
Exactly. The 80% rule states that you must consume content where you already understand roughly 80% of what is being communicated.
Why 80% specifically? Like, if I understand that much, aren't I just reviewing what I already know? Where is the actual learning happening?
The magic happens in the remaining 20%. When you understand 80% of the context, your brain feels safe.
Oh, so the effective filter stays low.
Exactly. Because you grasp the overall narrative, your brain naturally and subconsciously infers the meaning of the 20% you don't know, purely based on the surrounding clues.
So it solves the puzzle without you having to open a dictionary.
Yes.
So if I'm reading and I hit a wall where I don't know the vocabulary, I should probably seek out easier material until I hit that 80% threshold.
Exactly. And reading is actually the fastest way to build that vocabulary, provided you understand the two distinct gears of reading.
Yeah.
Intensive versus extensive.
Intensive versus extensive. They serve different neurological functions.
Completely different.
Break that down for me. What is intensive reading?
Intensive reading is rigorous, analytical decoding. You take a very short text, maybe just one single paragraph or one page.
Okay.
You go through it line by line. You highlight unfamiliar syntax, you analyze the grammar structure, and you look up the unknown words.
Yeah.
You are dissecting the language to understand its anatomy.
It sounds a bit like a programmer writing and debugging a piece of software code line by line. It's slow, tedious, and highly focused.
That's brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
Yes, you are writing the code into your brain, but you can't do that all day. It's cognitively exhausting.
Right.
That is why you must balance it with extensive reading. Extensive reading is just running the software.
Just letting it run.
Yeah. It is reading at volume, strictly for pleasure. You pick up a novel or a magazine that you genuinely enjoy, and you just read.
What if I don't know a word?
If you encounter a word you don't know, you do not stop to grab a dictionary. You infer the meaning from the 80% you do understand, and you keep moving.
So you're just trusting that the program works. So intensive reading gives you the raw data, and extensive reading teaches your brain how to process that data at speed.
Exactly. The breadth of extensive reading is what actually makes you fluent because it exposes you to the natural rhythm and frequency of the language over and over again.
Okay, so let's say I've done the work, I've built my language bubble, I'm reading extensively, my brain has compiled the code, and I know thousands of words.
Awesome.
But there's a physical reality here. When I actually open my mouth to speak, my tongue feels tied in knots. Like, I know the word in my head, but I sound terrible when I say it out loud.
People constantly underestimate the physical mechanics of speech. I mean, your facial muscles, your tongue, your jaw, your vocal cords, they have spent your entire life mapped to the specific phones of your native language.
Right.
Speaking a new language requires your mouth to make entirely new physical shapes. It is quite literally a matter of muscle memory.
I totally relate to that. I remember the first time I tried to pronounce certain Arabic consonants deep in the throat. My physical anatomy just didn't know how to fire those specific muscles.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym for a muscle you've never used.
So how do we train the physical hardware of our mouths?
Through a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing. What is that?
Shadowing is not just listening to an audio track, pausing it, and repeating what you heard. It is mimicking a native speaker's audio simultaneously, trying to speak right over them, without pausing the track at all.
Wow.
Yeah, you match their pronunciation, their exact pauses, their tone, and their emotion in real time.
Wait, let me challenge that. If I'm an absolute beginner and I don't even know what the words mean yet, isn't trying to talk over a native speaker just going to teach me how to slur a bunch of gibberish?
It might feel like that at first.
Like, how does mindlessly repeating sounds actually help me learn the language?
That is a very fair point. But you have to separate vocabulary acquisition from prosody,
Prosody.
the rhythm and sound. Shadowing is not designed to teach you the definition of words. It is designed to train your physical articulators. Every language has a unique gear, a specific tempo, rhythm, and musicality.
I see.
French flows completely differently than Mandarin, which flows completely differently than German. By shadowing, even if you are just mimicking the sounds, you are physically training your mouth to adopt the rhythm of that specific language.
So I'm essentially tuning the instrument before I try to play a song on it.
Precisely. And in doing so, you'll discover something about native speakers that surprises most learners.
What's that?
Native speakers don't actually speak fast. They speak in chunks.
What do you mean by chunks?
Well, when we read text, we see words separated by neat little spaces, right?
Yeah.
But in spoken language, those spaces don't exist. Native speakers blend words together into single, continuous sound units. In English, we don't say, what are you going to do? We say, what chaganado.
Oh, right. What shaganado?
It becomes one single auditory chunk.
It's like a musical chord. If you play the notes C, E, and G individually with little pauses in between, it sounds robotic. It's just a sequence of notes.
Exactly.
But if you play them all at the exact same time, it blends into a C major chord. It has a totally different resonance.
That is exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
And if you try to speak a new language by perfectly enunciating every single individual word like a robot, not only will you physically exhaust yourself, but native speakers will actually struggle to understand you.
Wait, they won't understand me if I speak too clearly.
Right. They aren't listening for individual words. Their brains are wired to receive those blended chunks. Shadowing teaches you exactly where those words connect. You practice the smoothness of the connection, and the speed naturally follows.
This changes everything. So we tune the instrument. My mouth has the rhythm. My brain has the vocabulary from the comprehensible input.
Yeah.
But eventually I'm standing in front of another human being, and I have to actually build a unique sentence from scratch on the fly.
That's the real test.
And this is where the traditional grammar tables usually freeze people up. If we are throwing out the grammar textbooks, how do we construct sentences without panicking?
We replace rigid grammar rules with cognitive frameworks. And the first framework is analogical reasoning.
Analogical reasoning.
Yeah. The adult brain learns best not by memorizing isolated facts, but by linking alien information to familiar territory. You actively look for structural similarities between your native language and the target language. You use what you already know as a bridge.
And how do I know if the bridge I'm building is actually solid or if I just, like, misunderstood a concept entirely?
You test the bridge using the Feynman technique, named after the physicist Richard Feynman. The premise is simple. The true test of understanding a concept is whether you can explain it to an 8-year-old using simple language.
Okay, let's test this in real time. Let's role play.
Sure.
Say I am trying to learn Spanish, and I'm totally confused by the fact that nouns have genders masculine and feminine, which we don't really have in English. How would I use the Feynman technique to prove I understand it?
Well, you would stop trying to memorize a textbook definition, and you would imagine a child sitting across from you.
Okay.
You might say, imagine every object in the world belongs to one of two giant teams. There's the O team and the A team. If a word ends in O, it usually wears the O team uniform. If it ends in A, it wears the A team uniform. And you just have to make sure the words you put next to them wear the matching uniform.
Oh, that is brilliant. By forcing myself to strip away the linguistic jargon, I immediately expose whether I actually grasp the core logic.
Exactly.
If I stumble trying to explain the teams, I know I need to go back and review. But what about generating the sentences themselves? You mentioned bypassing textbooks. What is the alternative?
We use a framework based on universal communication needs.
Universal communication needs.
Yes. Regardless of the language, humans fundamentally need to communicate the exact same things. Who is involved, the action taking place, what the object is, and when or where it is happening.
Right, the basics.
Instead of memorizing conjugation charts, we use a simple tool called an N-chart. It's essentially a 4x4 grid.
Walk me through exactly how we build one of these grids. Like, let's construct one right now.
Let's do it. Grab a piece of paper and draw 4 columns. Column 1 is your who. Write down 4 subjects, I, you, we, they.
Okay, got it.
Column 2 is your action. Write down 4 helper verbs, want to, need to, like to, have to.
Okay.
Column 3 is your core verb, eat, go, sleep, see. And column 4 is your when or where. Now, tomorrow, here, later.
Okay, so I have 4 words in 4 columns. If I just do the math on that 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, that's 256 combinations.
Precisely. By simply moving left to right and picking one word from each column, you can instantly generate 256 unique, coherent sentences without looking at a single grammar rule.
We need to go now. It's literally a Build-A-Bear workshop for sentences.
It really is.
You just walk down the line, grab the components you need, and snap them together. But let me push back on this.
Go ahead.
This grid system completely ignores complex grammar. It ignores past and future verb conjugations. It ignores plural agreements. If I just use this grid, aren't I going to sound like a caveman?
At the very beginning, yes, you might sound a bit like a caveman. And that is entirely the point.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
You must prioritize workability over perfection. Human communication is a higher order system. Grammatical precision is a lower order system.
Okay, so workability is the goal.
Right. If you use your grid to say, I want you to go tomorrow, yes, the grammar isn't pristine. But did the native speaker understand your intent? Did communication occur? Yes.
And because communication occurred, I get real-world feedback instead of sitting alone in my room studying a chart.
Exactly. Native speakers do not mentally parse grammar trees before they open their mouths. They just talk based on instinct.
That makes total sense.
If you focus on achieving workability through those sentence grids, you start engaging in real conversations immediately. The nuanced grammar, the perfect conjugations, the gender agreements will naturally resolve itself over time through continued exposure and shadowing.
Workability creates momentum.
And momentum creates fluency.
Workability over perfection. That is incredibly freeing. Let's pull all of these threads together.
Right.
If you want to achieve rapid fluency, you have to abandon the casual weekly hobby approach. You need high-density daily intensity to pave that neural road. You need to put on your silly hat, Kill your ego and accept that embarrassment shuts down your learning centers.
And then you shape your environment.
Right. You build the language bubble, you change your digital settings to force ambient pattern recognition, and you consume content where you already understand 80% of the context.
Exactly.
You use intensive reading to compile the code and extensive reading to run the software. Then you physically train your mouth. You don't just repeat words. You shadow native speakers simultaneously to map the physical muscle memory and learn the musical chunks of the language.
You've got it.
Finally, you use in-charts to snap together practical sentences on the fly, testing your true understanding with the Feynman technique.
That is the complete cognitive blueprint. And there is one final, highly actionable step you need to integrate into your life starting today.
Ooh, what's that?
You must build your new language identity. Spend 5 minutes every single day acting as if you are already a fluent native speaker of your target language.
Wow, okay.
Adopt their cultural posture, their hand gestures, their tone, their passion. Language isn't just data transfer, it's an expression of identity. When you boldly take on the identity, the language naturally follows.
Act the part until you literally become the part. This has been absolutely phenomenal.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this masterclass on Daily English Class. We hope these cognitive shortcuts completely transform how you approach your learning journey.
Absolutely.
We want to hear from you. Please interact with us. Hit the like button, drop a comment below letting us know exactly what language you are currently tackling, share this video with your fellow language learners, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss another masterclass.
And before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final challenge to test that new identity right now.
I love a good challenge. Let's hear it.
Think about your internal monologue, that little voice inside your head that narrates your day. If you were to switch that internal voice to your target language this very second, what is the very first thing you would say to yourself?
Oh, that is a fantastic question to ponder. Figure out what that sentence is and go say it out loud. Keep learning and keep wearing that silly hat.